tell me more about the German occupation?
Well, the Germans, when they were occupation, I'm trying to figure out how many years. I think only about 2 or 3 years that they were there, and then they started to draft into the army and a lot of sorrow, a lot of sorrow. I remember in that time I'm trying to estimate I was about 12 years old, 10, 12 years old, people were very excited. The German army, was very strong and but there was a lot of friction. There was a lot of things go on. We lived in the city. We went to school in a city, and we lived not far from a Serbian cemetery, and I remember a lot. And then I think the house my dad rented from someone. I don't think so. We owned it. We had a neighbor. And he was a doctor, and he was a Jew, and we all of a sudden realized that he'd been picked up, and it was very sad. It was very sad. There was some other very sad things, but the house what we had in the city, the army came, and we had to give up rooms, like bedrooms, and they put the telephone in there. In those days, the telephone was all with wires, not like today telephone with no wires on it. There were hundreds of wires from the tree come into our house there where they had the telephone, and when the alarm went off, I remember that when the alarm all of a sudden went off, there was a rule: don't go out on the street. They did not call stop, they were shooting, because very bad things happened, very, very cruel things did happen, And I just recall one there right across from the cemetery, that at night there was no lights on, and don't go on the street at all. It doesn't matter what it is, And there was a patrol. There was one officer and two soldiers and machine guns walking down the street. And when they went walking across the road from the Serbian cemetery, one of the soldiers got killed. As I recall, just about every night was this on. And so it happened that a soldier got killed in front of a butcher shop from a member from our church. Their name was Brankovic. And they from the cemetery, these guerrillas shot him. They pulled that soldier in to the butcher shop, and these were Serbian people. They were scared, I would say, just like they to death. They didn't know what to do, but they got a little boy through the garden, to go to our house, and he had to go through a few gardens and cross a road, and then come to our house, and had a note that somebody should come, because they knew that there were some soldiers in our house. Because they were in big trouble because of that, and they knew that because the alarm went off and what all. And so they did. My sister and an officer, a German officer, walked on the street and came there, and because the people, So this went on, and then the German army and the German army police and all them, they got very angry. They were just unbelievable, and this soldier, what they dragged into the butcher shop, was shot in the head, and just awful. So there was daytime you could go, and there was a let's call it a pickup truck, but a truck with some soldiers and an officer, and they stopped on a hotel and went into the hotel, and I think they had a drink or what, I don't know, but there was a girl in there, and this girl had her hand wrapped up in some thin cloth, and the officer said, and the soldiers, they went out on the truck, and the officer said to her showed what happened, because she couldn't talk German, and she said hot water she poured on me, and the officer said, how is it? But he realized that girl was somehow restless, and she had a gun and shot the officers in the shoulder. And as soon as the shot went loose, the soldier off the truck ran in there, and the alarm went off, and I tell you, it was awful. And the army came, and this officer, wounded in the shoulder, said the girl ran right into this room. And there was a room, not big, and was a bed in it, and the window had double windows, were closed. Where is the girl? And they threw the bed out, and there was a lid, and there was a tunnel. I looked in after next day, I looked into that tunnel. I remember I was 10 years old, and I remember going into that, because it was all, you could go in there, and I went in there and looked into the tunnel. And through that tunnel, they found these gorillas in the cemetery. And they had jars, big jars, in the jars, and had blueprints in it where they were. And they found them, and they picked them up, and they hanged them, and they shot them. I believe even today, if you would go on that wall, I don't think so they're repaired, that you could see where they just. And they were all, see, that makes no sense. We never did that. I never heard anywhere that any Germans shot a Russian soldier in the back. See? Because it makes no sense. They shot like people, But that went on. That went on, and then the friction started more and more. But to come back to how then when communism came, and the communism wanted from the farmers grain. Unbelievable what they didn't even have. And I don't have the grain. And I don't care what you do, But there was a story, and it's supposed to be very true. That there was a story that this guy who demanded for the wheat had a good friend, and he says, look, I'm a friend of yours, that, I don't care what you do, you gotta get the grain, you gotta get the wheat. So he went to this inspector there to his house, and his wife knew him, says, your husband said I should have 2 bags of wheat. And the wife was holding the bags, and he filled the bags up and brought it. See, you're a good man, you got the wheat. And when he came home, the wife said, what's the idea giving this guy? What? He says, he came here and said, you said You should give him the wheat. And he brought the wheat. He says, you told me get the wheat, I don't care where. But that's supposed to be true, But there, then again, people, even taxes, they raise the taxes, and demanded of people what they didn't have, And, when you take all that, people don't realize, that when you change a government, there's a lot of big changes. And I want to just say one story on it. My dad used to say that, There was a man caught in a bush with a lot of mosquitoes. And the robbers took his clothes off and tied him on the tree. And he was all naked on a tree, and the mosquitoes came. And the mosquitoes just loaded right on him, And a friend came and tried to chase the mosquitoes away. And he said, no, don't chase them away. They're all full. The mosquitoes were all, if you watch the mosquitoes, we'll draw the blood, and it's all red, and it's all full. Leave them. If you chase them away, other ones will come, and they suck me dry. Now, you got to follow the story, and I hope you do, whoever will listen to it. And that's the same thing even today. I don't care who it is, here, Canada, United States, or wherever it is, just leave them there. They're full, they're okay. But if you change it, it just suck you dry. There is a lot of things, but see, in everything there, I realized and noticed and heard as a young kid already, 10, 15 years old, that the people were very praying and concerned and things. God will help. God will do a lot of things. God will warn people not to do evil. And doesn't matter to who you talk today, Islams or the Hindus or the Buddhists or then come to Christian thing, they all know the 10 Commandments. I even talked to some of them who used to come and take me home from church, and I noticed that they're from India or that they're from Pakistan and what all. And when I ask them sometimes about, yes, they have a commandment, do not kill. Do you realize that in our spiritual life, if people would just keep that commandment, love thy neighbor, help one another, be concerned for people, pray for one another. But sort of, I don't know, but it is, very, very hard to, it comes to my mind again where an old saying was, and to make, you can take a horse to the trough, but you can't make him drink. You can tell people. And my dad always said that. And I respect that very much. Listen. Consider it. Think about it. Think a little bit. Stop. Hey, what is he saying? Examine it, and then you still can do whatever you want to do. And what did Jesus said there? Think about it. Will I find faith when I come? And without faith, believing in the living God, is impossible to please God and to see God. God is everywhere. People have to realize that they cannot hide. I remember just quickly a story where my mom used to say, be good because God sees you. God see you where you are and what you're doing. I remember a little bit myself. I don't know how old I was. I went in a pig pen where it was all dark. Closed the door and said, see me if you can.